glory.
I want to know if you got your popcorn ready. Do you got your popcorn ready? I came out the womb, I was ready.
And he's hit the end zone for an unbelievable touchdown.
I would be honored if you played football for this team.
Throw it up above his head. They can't jump with me. Golly.
Oh, they tackle him at the 40-yard line.
Who can make a play? I can. Who can make a play? I can.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast, proud members of the Full-Time Fantasy Podcast Network. You can find them at FTFPodNet on Twitter. You can find me at SportsFanaticMB on Twitter. I've got two great co-hosts joining me today, Mr. Matthew Fox, who you can find at Nighthawk7734 on Twitter. And then we got Mr. Tony Dwyer. You can find him at Commissioner MR on Twitter. Today, we will be breaking down the Thursday night football game. We will also talk about some of the injuries and / benchings that have happened over the past couple days. And lastly, we'll give you guys some bold predictions. After that, I have a new co-host who's been joining me couple days a week, possibly just do a little bit of fun fantasy talk, debate on players, and then we will do some start, sit, advice questions as well. Mr. Ty Moss, a good buddy of mine, I've had him on before, does not have any social media stuff, as he doesn't believe in it. He thinks the government's tracking him that way. I'm just kidding a little bit, but he really doesn't have any social media stuff. But he will be joining me at the end of the podcast. We'll be doing a lengthy discussion on Amari Cooper, top wide receivers, and running backs. So please, hope you guys enjoy the episode. We'll jump right in Thursday Night Football first, and then we'll do all the other stuff. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you guys get a minute, please rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. It would mean a lot to all of us, as it really does help us out. And on top of that, rate and review a bunch of the other podcasts a part of this network. You can my goodness, you guys, this is all over the place. The likes of Jim Day of FF Champs, Bob Lung of the award-winning Fantasy Football Consistency Guide, Adam Ronis and Dr. Roto from SiriusXM Radio, Dwayne McFarland, Blake Sullivan, and a ton of others, all on this great network, Full-Time Fantasy, and you can find all of that and all of us on fulltimefantasy.com. And we've got the crew back together here that was supposed to be together last week. Tony and us had a little bit of scheduling conflicts, but he is back with us this Thursday. We have Mr. Matthew Fox with us as well. Excited to have you both on here today. We're going to do a little Thursday night preview. We'll talk about some of the big injuries and other stuff going on with NFL players, and then we're going to each give you guys possibly some bold prediction stuff at the end of the episode. Matt, Tony, how you guys doing? And thank you for joining me today.
Doing pretty good. Just looking forward to starting another NFL week.
Yeah, no complaints here at all. It's crazy how fast the football season starts, and now here we are. We got Thursday games. You only have to have a couple days without football, and then Sunday night, and then Monday. And favorite time of year, best time of the year for me.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. The only bad part is, just like Matt was saying, we're already here. Yeah, I mean, we're already in week 3. Like, week 3 is starting tonight, and that's crazy that we're already 3 weeks into the NFL season. It just boggles my mind that we are that deep in already, and before we know it, I feel like it's going to be week 17, and we're all going to be upset and crying because our fantasy seasons are over.
We eating all day, bro. I'm hitting you every time. Every time you come as well, I'm going to hit you. I'm not going to be able to do that. You don't want no problems, bro. You are my boy. I'm a man. It's about to get ugly. I want to score. Yeah. You only talk so much. It's time to do now. Not just a good old-fashioned rear end whipping. To the house, baby. I'm in a league of my own. They ain't ready for me. Are you tired? Are you tired? Let's go. Good game.
Game previews. Alright, so we're going to be previewing the Thursday night football game tonight between the Tennessee Titans, who are 1-1, and the Jacksonville Jaguars, who are 0-2. Tennessee being given the 61% chance to win this game. On the Tennessee side of things here, I'll start with Tony, since you missed out last week. Outside of Derrick Henry, and we'll save him last because he's obviously very fantasy relevant. Outside of Derrick Henry, are you willing to start anyone else on this Tennessee offense tonight?
I'll start Delaney Walker. He's a start for me for sure. But outside of that, man, that's a dart throw.
Yeah, where exactly would you have Delanie Walker this week? Because he actually had, obviously, he blew out the Browns in week 1. And then week 2 didn't actually have a bad week. I think he finished right in the 15 range. Would you put him right back in that range, expecting tonight against a good Jacksonville defense?
I'd probably put him a little higher than that even. Back in tight end 1. If he finished this week, for the week, I don't mean for the season, for the 3 weeks total, but if he was a week 3 tight end 8 or 9, that wouldn't be surprising to me at all. It's a divisional game. They're going to have to win. And Blake Bortles. I'm thinking, Marcus Mariota. He's been looking at him. I mean, the guy's gotten 6 targets a game. He's been really consistent with him too. So I'm pretty confident in Delanie Walker at this point. You always are a little worried about injuries with older guys like this, but he's been on the field. He's been showing up. He's been catching the ball when it's thrown his way, and I don't see that changing. So, yeah, I'm confident in him. I'd call him, if I had to guess, I'd say tight end 9 or 10 wouldn't be unreasonable, and there's an upside there.
Okay. What about you, Matt? Anyone outside of Derrick Henry you would feel comfortable starting?
Delanie Walker's it for me too. That's when I was looking at it. I'm about in the same group. I think if he finished anywhere between tight end 8 and 12, that would be about what you'd expect. He's always a decent bet to get a touchdown. There's no one else I think is super reliable in this passing game, including Marcus Mariota, and with the corners that Jacksonville has and on the road, I would not feel good if I was forced to start one of their receivers.
All right, so Derrick Henry, he's a guy that, Tony, I'm not sure where you landed on him, but me and Matt were both not big fans of Derrick Henry coming into the season. Going back to last year, in the game where he had that wonderful, I believe it was 99 or 90-yard touchdown run against the Jaguars, he has averaged 80 yards a game and or a touchdown since that game, and he has continued that throughout this season, much to my dismay, because I did not expect him to continue to be good. He has balled out. What are you expecting out of him tonight against a fairly good Jacksonville Jaguars defense, and do you think he will continue doing it the rest of the season moving forward?
Yeah, I hate to admit it too. I was way wrong about Derrick Henry. If these 2 weeks are any indication of what they're going to do, I wasn't convinced that they were going to feature him as a back. But at the same time, I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth. Last week, he only had 15 rushing attempts. If he only has 15 rushing attempts again, then you and I and Matt, we're all right. But I feel like I was wrong here. Derrick Henry is enormous, and he's impossible to bring down. So as soon as they figure out to just feed that guy the football, you only have to be up a couple of points and just keep running over those defenses. Derrick Henry, you excluded him, but Derrick Henry's a guy I totally expect him to go off for 130. He's going to have, I'm thinking of the Colts right now. Marlon Mack, I think it was week 1, had 157 rushing yards or something like that. Yeah. Derrick Henry's totally in line to have a game just like that against Gardner Minshew, who looked good for a couple of weeks, but is still a rookie and is dealing with not the most ideal weapons, if that makes sense.
Yeah. What about you, Matt? What are you expecting from our best friend Derrick Henry here tonight?
Yeah, I mean, this game is kind of the anniversary of his coming out party. It was a Thursday night against the Jaguars. It was week 13 last year. I had looked it up. He ran for 238 yards and 4 touchdowns in that game. I don't expect he's going to have such a huge night tonight, but he's been incredibly steady since then. He has been at least minorly involved in the passing game, and as we saw in week 1, all it takes is a couple missed tackles for him to make a big play there. I think he's safely in the RB2 range right now, with some potential to go even higher depending on what happens. We saw in week 1, 75-yard passing TD. In addition to the 80 and the touchdown on the ground, he seems to be the most reliable piece of their offense.
Before we move on to the Jacksonville Jaguars, would either one of you feel comfortable starting this Tennessee Titans defense tonight against a Gardner Minshew with a variety of different weapons?
No, I'll jump in right away. I'm probably not going to do that. There's just too much gamble there. Gardner Minshew has shown up, and he's done well, especially with the deep ball. DJ Chark is a name that a lot of us have been talking about, doing a whole lot with limited touches. The guy's good at football. I guess I'm somewhere torn between this is going to be a really, really low scoring game, or one of these teams is just going to run away with it. Right. And with Tennessee not being a contender, one of the elite contenders on defense, I'm probably fading both of the defenses.
I absolutely would start the Tennessee defense. We saw Gardner Minshew have a nice game in week 2, and the Houston Texans defense was still a great play. In the first 2 weeks of the season, Tennessee faced Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham Jr. on the road, and then they came home and faced a pretty decent Colts team with Marlon Mack and T.Y. Hilton, and they held both of them in check and were very playable. I see no reason to yank him out of your lineup facing Jacksonville and the Husk formerly known as Leonard Fournette.
So just a question to you. If you were, is there a streaming option on that would be wired right now? So we didn't talk about this beforehand, so it might be kind of difficult to do this on the fly, but of the defenses that might be there on, let's say, a redraft roster, that might be a redraft league, that defenses that would be available on the wire, are you saying that you are confident over all of those that you would be very comfortable with Tennessee, or would you even look?
I looked, the top streaming option this week would be Dallas, but actually in a few leagues that I'm in, they've been scooped up. Yeah. Dallas obviously playing against the Dolphins, so anyone going against the Dolphins. But if you looked based on some of the other matchups, most of the defenses that are available are not that great and have not that great of matchups. The defenses, and then you have other defenses like Baltimore, where you'd be excited to have them normally, but they're playing Kansas City, so that is a H-no for me. Yeah, so, looking at the matchups this week, there aren't a ton of matchups that scream high favorability to streaming. Tennessee, this is not a matchup that I'm super scared of, seeing what they were able to do against better offenses the first 2 weeks.
Okay.
Well, I actually have a list here of most owned defenses, or most that are available right now. So I'll give you guys a list of them and tell me what you guys think. I see 2 on there just glancing at this list right now that I would probably start over Tennessee. So obviously Tennessee right now sitting at the top. We would start them over Jacksonville tonight, correct?
Yes, I would.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, the next one, this one is kind of a question for me, which we'll get into later because of injury. Seattle against New Orleans.
I would start them over Seattle because Seattle let a lot up into Pittsburgh with Mason Rudolph. They were not very good against the Bengals at home in week 1. New Orleans still has Alvin Kamara, still has Michael Thomas, still has Sean Payton calling the plays. I don't think they're a lock for a great performance.
Yeah, I'm going to get backed into a corner here if we keep doing this because I'm not picking Seattle. I'll take Tennessee.
Okay, Seattle I thought would be a good, interesting question. Same with the next 2. The rest of them you got the likes of Arizona, Houston, Cleveland. I don't think any of those guys are worth starting. So what about Tampa Bay at the New York Giants and the newly minted quarterback Daniel Jones?
Gosh, Titans.
Yeah, Tampa Bay's defense has not been incredibly impressive in any way. And, the Giants still have Saquon Barkley. They could have an okay game and still not put up a lot of points.
Okay. Well, they put up 12 and 9 points so far this season against San Francisco, who's actually looked fairly good offensively, and then Carolina, that was a bad game all around. But okay, and then the last one would be then Carolina at Arizona, who's actually put up some fairly good points in their 2 games, even though losses.
Fine, I'll start Tennessee.
Yeah, I definitely would not start them over Carolina. I've been pretty impressed with what Murray has done.
All right. Well, then, outside of those, and like I said, the rest of the list, you've got Washington, Arizona, Indy, Houston, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, Atlanta, Cincinnati, Detroit, Kansas City, Denver, Oakland, New York, and Miami. So I imagine everybody's probably running the waiver wire to get Miami. Outside of them,
actually, Detroit on that list is the only one that I would consider because they have been pretty decent. They held the Chargers down pretty well, and the Eagles are the walking wounded. They're so injured they aren't even able to have actual practices.
Yeah. Would that be a question for you too, Tony, or would you still stick with Tennessee?
Well, I hate it. I'm going to stick with Tennessee.
Okay, all right. All right, so let's move on to the Jacksonville side then. Obviously, we don't need to touch on the defense since we've talked about how we really have no interest in starting them whatsoever. What are we expecting now again tonight out of, the man himself, the man, the myth, the legend, Gardner Minshew, going up against what we expect to be a decent Tennessee defense here tonight? Again, in my opinion, has some very good weapons around him, and DJ Chark, D.D. Westbrook. But what are we expecting against a good secondary in Tennessee tonight?
I actually think Gardner Minshew could be pretty decent. I mean, the Jacksonville offense wasn't incredible the last 2 weeks, but last week he threw for 213 yards, ran for 56, threw a TD. He's only had one interception over the course of 2 weeks. I think he could be a decent little play, even if they don't put up a lot of points. I mean, they only scored 12 last week, and he would have still been playable. There is one deep 2-quarterback league I'm in where I lost a couple of people, and I'm actually playing him tonight.
What about you, Tony? What are your thoughts on Gardner Minshew tonight?
Well, I like Gardner Minshew a lot. I'm still a little bit hesitant because I'm a little more limited. To be honest with you, Gardner Minshew is somebody that didn't quite make it all the way on the radar. I was looking at the Will Greers. I looked at Mason Rudolph a lot this offseason. That's not that I was anticipating an injury or something, but regardless, Gardner Minshew snuck up on me a little bit, and he's done a really, really good job. Conley, and am I thinking of that? That's not the right name, is it?
Yeah, Chris Conley. Yeah, he's there. He's had 2 good games. Him and Chark.
That's exactly
okay. That's really exactly
good. Chark is who I was thinking of. I apologize. And that's another guy that caught me off guard there. So the two of them together seem to have a bunch of chemistry. Chark's making huge plays, and I'm seeing Fournette slowly get ramped up a little bit.
Yeah,
he's had 6 targets both games, 13 rushes the first game, 15. This could be the game where we see Fournette become who we kind of want him to be. I mean, if he ends up with 17 to 18 rushing attempts and 5 to 7 targets, this could be a game where they kind of put it on the back of their running back and let Minshew throw that deep ball down to get those points to try to win the game, but just grind it out. It's just going to be a grinder.
Yeah, so I'm actually with you on the Fournette thing. He's played 93% of their snaps so far this season. I like that he's getting a little bit more involved in the passing game, as you just mentioned. I don't think he's looked that bad. I think it's really just the touchdowns have kind of what has killed his fantasy value right now. He's had 2 good games. If he gets a touchdown in there, he's right there at 20 points those first 2 games.
Yeah, he's got no touchdown.
Yeah, I think that's really what's held him back so far these past few weeks. I would be willing to start him as an RB2 tonight against this Tennessee defense, and now I'm all in on the Chark attack as well. I think he's proven through these first 2 weeks. He looked good with Foles out there as well, and then obviously Gardner Minshew with most of week 1, and then all of last week, he's looked good. He's caught a lot of passes. He's got made yards. He's gotten a lot of yards and scoring touchdowns. I think he has moved clearly into flex-worthy play for me. Outside of those 2, though, unless you're in a super flex league, I would not start Gardner Minshew, even though I think he could have a good game tonight. So your guys' thoughts on, outside of Gardner Minshew, you willing to plug in Leonard Fournette and Gardner Minshew? We'll start with you, Matt. I'm sorry, not Gardner Minshew, DJ Chark or Chris Conley.
I don't know. I guess it depends on how deep your league is. I can more easily see DJ Chark just because I feel like he's been a little bit more consistent. But it's hard to know which of the receivers is actually going to be great from week to week. Any of them could have a game. I wouldn't feel super confident in any of them.
Yeah, and I'm there with you too. I'm not as a flex. We're not even at the bye weeks yet, so I'm probably holding off on those guys at least one more week until I don't have any other option.
All right, so then who are you guys picking to win the game tonight? Tennessee Titans or the Jacksonville Jaguars? We'll start with you, Tony.
I'll take the Titans in a low-scoring, boring game. I should have said I wanted the Titans defense, okay? Can I admit that right now?
Yeah,
low-scoring game. It's going to be a low-scoring game, and I picked the Titans because of Derrick Henry. Gosh, I hate that.
I'm taking the Titans, too.
I'm taking the Jaguars. I actually think they're going to have a really good game tonight. I like that Tennessee defense, and I agree with you, Tony. I think it is going to be low scoring. I don't think it's going to be a 38-28, some kind of shootout like that. But I think the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to pull it off tonight. I believe in Gardner Minshew and that porn stash of his that he's rocking. I think they're going to rally a little bit on this whole Jalen Ramsey controversy and all that stuff. I think that they're going to have a good game tonight. Leonard Fournette's going to ball out a little bit, and they're going to end up winning this game.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story. And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
All right, so let's talk about some of the, not necessarily breaking news, but the NFL news that's happened over the past couple days. Daniel Jones actually got announced a starter Tuesday that me and Matt recorded, and we both kind of completely forgot about that. So I want to get your guys' opinion on Daniel Jones moving forward, and we'll touch on the big subject as well with Eli Manning. We'll save that second, because I feel like that's probably going to be a deeper discussion. But in my opinion, Eli Manning is not the reason that the Giants are 0-2. He's still put up fairly good numbers, fairly similar to what he's done the past few seasons. So what are your thoughts on Daniel Jones getting the starting job? And then what are your thoughts on him moving forward for fantasy? We'll start with you, Tony, and we'll move to Matt.
I'm a little bit disappointed in the decision as far as real life football goes to bench Eli Manning. I don't see the Giants in a position to win a whole lot this year. Maybe I'm on the outside looking in. I'm on the wrong side of that argument, but it just seems like they're really putting Daniel Jones directly in the line of fire. Golden Tate's not back yet. Sterling Shepard's banged up. Yeah, Saquon Barkley is there, but to me, I don't even understand the move at all. I don't think it's going to necessarily help them win a whole bunch more games. But maybe it's some, I don't know. We've been seeing Dante Pettis has been getting, what was the coach's words? He's trying to motivate him by not playing him. Maybe it's one of those ridiculous situations, but to me, this doesn't make any sense. I like him. I like Jones Bonds, but I don't see him being able to be immediately impactful. It's going to take a couple of weeks at least, and he may be pedestrian at best by then.
Yeah, I think the biggest disservice that Daniel Jones did himself was looking fantastic in the preseason, because that really put a ticking clock. I think most of us went from thinking that Jones was a long shot to play this year to knowing he was going to come in at some point. I had said on Monday when we talked about the possibility a little bit that if I was the Giants, I wouldn't put Daniel Jones in right now for some of the reasons we just talked about. This is a road game, so he's not even at home. He has no receivers. I mean, I don't know how they expected that Eli Manning was going to do a lot with cast-offs from the Denver Broncos offense as his only receivers. I mean, he's out there with Benny Fowler and Cody Latimer. Those guys are fine for wide receiver 4 and 5 on your team, but if that's all you got, that is a problem. So even with Saquon Barkley, their offense is limited. So I don't know that you're setting Daniel Jones up to succeed that well right off the bat. And what happens in New York if he flounders a little bit? I mean, the last time Eli got pulled, they put in somebody behind him. That person didn't look that great. And 2 weeks later, oops, we made a mistake. Let's put Eli back. I feel like this situation with the guy you drafted to be your franchise quarterback, there's no going back. And if he has a real bad first experience and gets off to a real bad start in games that count, are you going to ruin your future? If it was me, I would have waited a few weeks, picked a nice plum home game when they were playing like the Redskins, and threw him out there. But, I think there's some desperation in New York. There's some desperation to be relevant. There's some desperation to get something positive going. There's some desperation to get the fans off their back. And for Pat Shurmur, I think he's just like, I'm over it. I'm going to do the only thing that fans seem to think we can do, which is put Eli on the bench.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I thought it would come around the bye week, especially with the fact that, as you just touched on, Golden Tate out. Sterling Shepard, while it looks like he's progressing toward playing, still in the concussion protocol. They've got all kinds of injuries. You really only have Evan Ingram and Saquon Barkley to rely on. I really thought they'd wait till at least a bye week, give him, the 10 days to kind of prepare for that first game. Hopefully you'll have Tate back, unless he gets injured. But hope you get Shepard back and everything, and then allow him that really to kind of have his coming out out party with somewhat of a full team around him. He's not going to have that. I'm the same. I'm disappointed for Eli. I think he deserves better than what he's gotten. Again, I don't think his play is the reason they've lost. So that leads me to the bigger question that everybody's been talking about. Do you guys think that Eli Manning is a Hall of Fame quarterback? We'll start with you, Matt. Go ahead.
I do not.
Tony?
Super Bowls alone are not enough for me.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a bummer. He's won some really clutch games, and he's done some really great things, and he's won 2 Super Bowls. And one of them, I think, was in Indianapolis. Without looking that up, I'm pretty sure one of them was, which is important to me because I'm in Indianapolis. But yeah, like Matt said, the Super Bowl rings alone is not enough, and there have been plenty of times that Eli, unfortunately, didn't get the job done. By putting him into the Hall of Fame conversation, it just opens a huge box, and unfortunately, no.
I disagree with both of you. I think that he is a Hall of Famer. And I'll just say not just because of the Super Bowls. I don't put that much into it, but I do think in his prime, he was still one of the best quarterbacks in the game at that time. He, as something you mentioned, Tony, was extremely clutch in the playoffs when it matters, and that I think matters more at the quarterback position because in a way you can carry your team and lead them to a Super Bowl. I don't put that much into Super Bowls because I do think that's more of a team win than a quarterback win. You have to have a great team to win the Super Bowls. And in the one, I can't remember which one it was. I want to say it was the second one. It was more that defense that won that game. I mean, he had the great throw to Mario Manningham on the sideline that helped kind of lead them down to get the touchdown. But that defense was after Tom Brady that entire game, and it was because of them that they won the Super Bowl, not necessarily Manning. But I do think with the stats and everything he has put up and the clutch play that he showed in the playoffs and in the Super Bowls, I think deserves him a spot in the Hall of Fame. I do think he'll eventually get there, but I do think it's close. I don't have – if people say no, I don't argue vehemently against that, I guess. If he were to not get in, it would not, ruin my day or my life or anything. But in my opinion, I would value him as a Hall of Fame quarterback.
I'm looking right here real quick. I just looked up career stats, and this doesn't have anything to do with it, but he's not 116 for 116, is he? Am I looking at something crazy?
Yeah, he's 116 and 116 as his record.
It's incredible. That's incredible to me.
He is 500.
Yeah, I do agree with what you said, though. I mean, those quarterback wins are more important, and there is weight. That's something to be said there. When the pressure's on and when the game matters most, are you going to make it work? So I do understand. I just don't necessarily agree this time.
And that's fine. Like I said, it seems like a lot of people are really torn on this. He's one of those guys that is obviously not going to be unanimous and might not even get the first try or ever. Like I said, I would not be surprised if he doesn't. A lot of people are torn on this, but I saw a lot of people talking about it, obviously. When the announcement came out, you have a lot of his teammates coming out and defending him, saying they thought he was. Other people saying not, so I wanted to get your guys' opinion, see if it differed from mine. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's not like we're talking about Tom Brady here, who, if anybody came on here and said he didn't deserve in the Hall of Fame, as much as I hate the guy, needed to be slapped in the face by reality, because he's a Hall of Fame.
But I think it's going to be an open question with all three of those first-round quarterbacks from that draft year, because Ben Roethlisberger has his fans and his detractors, and Phillip Rivers, who statistically seems to have been one of the probably the most successful of the three on a year-to-year basis, has never had the big game wins. And I think you could see it going either way on any of those three when it comes to the Hall of Fame.
And that's why I don't think any of the three of them make it in.
Oh, really?
I would tend to agree. I wouldn't put any of them in either.
The problem is if you put one of them in, you have to put them all in. They're all equally good, but none of them have ever been
transcendent.
None of them have been transcendent. Good. That's a perfect way of saying it, Matt.
Really? So I'm just curious. I was going to move on to something else, but this is an interesting discussion for me. So you would say that you don't think Phillip Rivers or Ben Roethlisberger in their prime were transcendent in the NFL? Not for fantasy, in NFL.
I'm saying that if you let one of the three of them in, you got to let them all three in. That's my argument there. They've all have had phenomenal portions of their career. I mean, when you think about Big Ben at his prime, and when they had Antonio Brown healthy, when they had Le'Veon Bell there and ready and eager and taking that workload that he took, when they were playing football and made it look easy and putting up these huge numbers. Of course, if you look at that 1 year, but that's why I'm looking. I guess that's why I'm saying if you put one of them in, you have to put them all in, because none of them did it for such a sustained period of time that we don't have a choice, like a Tom Brady, which is unfair. It's so unfair to compare the two of them. But you literally, and it brings up a whole other question. Is it the system? Is it the quarterback? Tom Brady's going to the Hall of Fame, so I don't want to get lost in this wormhole.
Let's not get into that one. That'll take forever to go through.
Yeah, I don't want to get lost in it, but yeah, I see them all pretty equal. Where if you could put them all into one quarterback, it's a first round ballot unanimous vote. But unfortunately, I don't see a way of letting any of them in.
Yeah, I don't think there was any point in time where I'd say any of the three was transcendent. And for Ben and Eli, they've won some Super Bowls, but you look at the performances in the years when they won those Super Bowls. I mean, the first Super Bowl that Ben won was really Jerome Bettis' Super Bowl. Yeah. Ben did not look good really at any point. He was very young. The second one he won, it wasn't too bad. It wasn't incredible. Statistically, if I was talking about from a consistency standpoint, Rivers is the one that I like the best of the three, but I think it's even hard to make a case for him. All three of those guys, you're looking, I think when you're talking about between a quarterback who's good and who's a franchise quarterback and a guy who is no doubt about a Hall of Fame quarterback, they have to rise to a different level during the most important games. Of those three, the only one you could make an argument about that in the playoffs is probably Manning, and it's on the strength of those two kind of fluky Super Bowl wins over New England. The Chargers in Rivers' tenure have consistently failed to meet expectations in the postseason. Ben Roethlisberger, let's not forget, lost a playoff game to Tim Tebow. Yeah. I mean, when you're talking about rising to another level, and no one was blessed with some of the weapons and some of the defensive talent that Roethlisberger had of the three. So I'm with Tony. If you put one in, you'd almost have to put them all in because they're all about the same level. They're all good players. At times have been underrated players, especially for fantasy. But Hall of Fame, if you're talking about a walk for the Hall of Fame, we've seen plenty of guys who have Hall of Fame talent that haven't gotten in. So it wouldn't be a huge surprise to me to see those three guys miss.
So I think for me, I don't necessarily agree that if you had to put one, you'd have to put all three in. Because
of his last name.
I do think that Phillip Rivers deserves to be in, whether he wins the Super Bowl or not. And honestly, that's why I kind of hoped he won one last year, because I really think that cement the conversation for him. Because something you pointed out, Matt, he has by far been the most consistently throwing for over 4,000 yards. His touchdown to interception ratio almost every single year is ridiculous. And the one thing you also said with Big Ben is if you really go back and look at Rivers' career and what he's done in Los Angeles, he has not had quite that. He's really not had a full team around him most of the time. He had a couple years with LaDainian Tomlinson, and then really the past, I would say, 2 years, he's had a really good team around him, but hasn't quite had that full team that I think has everybody expected, like last year, for them to be Super Bowl run that just got destroyed by the Patriots. But I think all three will get in, but if I had to choose one of the three, for me, it would be Rivers, just based on what he's done throughout his entire career. But that'll definitely be interesting to see, because we are clearly coming toward the end for all three, so it'll be interesting to see how the rest of that plays out. Don't want to dive too deep into this, because like I said, it is a fantasy podcast, but an extremely interesting conversation nonetheless. So let's move on to some of the injuries here. David Njoku, we found out earlier today, broke his wrist on that went up high for a ball that Baker kind of threw over his head, and he came down on his neck, head, and wrist. It is broken, likely out 4 to 6 weeks. Does this do much for either one of you? I kind of feel like that makes a tight end position almost irrelevant in Cleveland, as you got Demetrius Harris now coming up. I don't expect him to do much in fantasy. Either one of you guys disagree with that?
No, but it may help Landry a little bit, gives less competition for targets.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought too. I was down on Njoku coming into the season because of Landry, and maybe I was wrong. Week 1, Njoku had 6 targets, so that was incorrect. But my thought process the whole time was that Landry falls back into his old ways, gobbling up targets in the middle of the field. And he had to share those with the tight end. So I don't think it hurts the Browns at all. I think that's really unfortunate for Njoku. I hope he gets healthy quick. Hope he comes back. I think they're going to move forward just the same. It's not going to affect Beckham in any way, I don't think. And Chubb's still going to have plenty of room to run. So, no, I don't think it affects the team.
All right, and obviously, Matt, we touched on it a little bit with the Drew Brees injury, but more has come out since then. He had the surgery, going to be out for a while. Tony, your thoughts on what this means for the Saints offense and their quarterback position moving forward?
Well, the Saints offense is in a little bit of trouble. There's a lot going on, though, with trying to figure out who the backup quarterback's really going to be. There's already talk about Taysom Hill splitting work. We talked about that just a little bit before. So I'll leave that for you, Matt, because you were the one that brought that up. You must have seen that report. But I expect Alvin Kamara to be more heavily used. Unfortunately, I was really big on Latavius Murray this offseason. Huge, trying to get his name out there. This is going to destroy a lot of his upside. Alvin Kamara is going to be more needed, and the goal line work just may not be as readily available as I'd hoped it was. So with Michael Thomas, with Alvin Kamara, Teddy Bridgewater or Taysom Hill or whoever it's going to be is going to have plenty of weapons to work with, but it does hurt my Latavius Murray piece.
Yeah, and we had actually talked earlier in the week, and I suggested maybe they would have to lean more on the run game. I went and looked at the play-by-play splits from that game because it wasn't one that I had watched a lot. Murray got 5 carries. 3 of them came when Breeze was still in. So it really does seem like once Breeze went out, they did kind of shift away from him, which I found interesting. You'd be curious to see how that moves going forward. I think Michael Thomas is still an okay play. I think Alvin Kamara is still an okay play. Both of them probably take a little hit from the top side that they could have. We talked about before, none of the other receivers really interest me, including Jared Cook, until we can see something. The biggest piece of news that probably has come out since then is someone asked Sean Payton yesterday if he was going to be more conservative with gadget plays for Taysom Hill since he's now the backup quarterback. And his response was, who said he's the backup quarterback? That's probably a little bit of a misdirection. I think almost everyone believes that Bridgewater is going to start, but it makes me wonder if they're going to use a 2-quarterback rotation. This is a reason I'm actually not high on picking up or trying to use Bridgewater this week, because I think we really need to see what this offense is going to look like. Sean Payton is very good at being creative. They have a lot of weapons. We've seen Taysom Hill have a piece of the offense even when Breeze was healthy and playing. I think there's definitely a chance that he's going to do something unique there.
Yeah, I would imagine Taysom Hill gets a lot of run. I mean, the one thing I would point out with people who don't think he's going to get in there, they were willing to pull Drew Brees off the field and throw Taysom Hill out there in some situations. So why would you think they wouldn't do that with Teddy Bridgewater? So I think both are going to get a fair amount of work. I'm with both of you. I think Thomas and Kamara, I don't think get hurt that much. I'm interested to see what happens with Murray. Obviously, I didn't know that stat before you just You talked about it there, Matt, but I would imagine he'll still get some run, and I'm right there with you, Tony, as someone who was hoping I have a lot of shares of Latavius Murray as well this year, because I thought he'd fill in well in that Mark Ingram role, so hopefully that doesn't go away completely, but this week will definitely be a clear test and what they expect from their offense, and I do think Teddy Bridgewater will have a better game here as well. He didn't get thrusted into there. A lot of that game plan was obviously based on the fact that they they didn't think Drew Brees was going to get injured and play that whole game. Likely Sean Payton is still, I consider, one of the best offensive coaches in the game. Will game plan completely now around Teddy Bridgewater and Taysom Hill, so I think that they'll likely have a better game as well here against the Seahawks this Sunday. The last bit of injury we will talk on before we'll do some bold predictions really quick is Cam Newton. It's trending toward him possibly not playing this Sunday. What are your guys' thoughts on who possibly gets the start here and what this might do for CMC, Curtis Samuel, and DJ Moore?
It's a real bummer because they have a decent matchup playing against the Arizona Cardinals, whose defense I don't really like, but Cam Newton hasn't looked good. If he plays with all this going on. You don't feel good about him. If Kyle Allen is the guy that comes in and plays, I don't feel really good about that. I am probably staying away from any of their pass catchers. I think McCaffrey got to have a bounce back game. He's going to get dump off passes. He should be able to run a lot better against Arizona. I mean, we've seen what the two teams have done against Arizona the first 2 weeks. So I think he's fine, but I would not be interested in the pass catchers.
Yeah, I'll just follow up with exactly what you just said and leave it there. I agree 100%.
All right, so let's do a little bit of bold predictions. We'll expand on this more moving forward, but today we're just going to do one player each that we think could have a huge game this week, contrary to what they've done the past 2 weeks, based on matchup or maybe just a gut feeling. I'll start it off, and then we'll go to Tony and then Matt. For me, it's going to be Stephon Diggs. I like the matchup they have this week against the Raiders. Raiders have actually given up the most passing yards in the NFL this season, which I know is crazy, considering the amount of points that the Dolphins have given up. But it is actually the Raiders. I think that they're going to come out and throw the ball a little bit more. Kirk Cousins has a bounce-back game, and so does Stephon Diggs, hopefully a little bit more healthy off that hamstring injury he's been dealing with here the past couple weeks, and really, just having bad 2 games, just a 1 catch last week for the touchdown, 40 yards. Did have 2 called back. I think that this is finally his week. He's going to break out, have a huge game, 100 yards and a touchdown. Matt, or Tony, I can't remember who I said was going next, but what do you guys have for your bold prediction in week 3?
Well, I don't have a stat line written down yet, but Mason Rudolph's going to come in and pick up right where Big Ben left off. And it might be, okay, I'm hoping, a little bit better, bigger picture. We've been hearing all week long about college roommates and James Washington. And I just, as we were talking, I've got a notification on my phone about basically shots being fired at Dante Moncrief for not catching the ball. There's a legitimate chance here that Mason Rudolph, he showed capable. He's definitely been serviceable. He can step in with Juju, with his old college roommate, with a old college teammate, and the big question there is going to be James Conner. He's been a little bit banged up, but recent reports say he's going to be okay. If he's got all 3 of those weapons available to him and Vance McDonald, there's no reason in the world why this team can't pick up right where it left off. So I'm excited about that. So I'd stat him out at what Ben did in week 1, or maybe even a little bit better. I'd have to look at the stats though.
Yeah, I think I liked that call too. I think Mason Rudolph's going to be good. He has some history with James Washington. I had considered that, but now brace yourselves. My bold prediction is Mitch Trubisky finishes as a top 15 QB. They're at Washington. Based on what you've seen from Trubisky the first couple of weeks, you're probably not thinking a lot about him. But if you watch the first 2 weeks, Washington's pass defense is nothing to feel secure about. Even Josh Norman has been getting torched. So I think Matt Nagy, good play caller. They really need to get that Chicago offense going. They have a lot of pieces that they want to get going. Burton's getting healthier. Allen Robinson's been looking good. I think they're going to scheme some things up against some soft coverage, and we're going to see Mitch Trubisky show his first flashes of growth in 2019.
I like it. I like both of them. And real quick, before we get out of here, note just came across that Sterling Shepard has been cleared from concussion protocol, so he will be playing Sunday. So that is more good news for Daniel Jones, who we talked about just a little bit ago. Matt, Tony, thank you guys so much for joining me today, breaking down the Thursday Night Football game, injury news, and then bold predictions. I look forward to talking to you guys again next week. Have yourselves a great Thursday night and enjoy the Sunday slate.
Thanks, Bunch. Happy football.
Enjoy.
First and 10 at the Lions 29, and Prescott goes screen right. Elliott down the right side to the 25, to the 20, to the 10. Elliott to the pylon. Zeke Elliott, touchdown. 38 on the screen.
Second down at 10, takes the snap, gives it. Chubb runs, he's to the 15, he's to the 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50. There goes Chubb, he's to the 30, 20, 10, 5, touchdown!
from Adam. Case on a deep drop, steps up in the pocket. He'll fire to the right side. Caught by Diggs. Stay up. Oh my God! Oh my God! 30, no 10, touchdown! Are you kidding me? It's a Minneapolis miracle! Stephon Diggs and the Minnesota Vikings have walked up on the New Orleans Saints. It's a 61-yard Minneapolis miracle.
All right, we're going to be debuting a new segment here. My good buddy Ty Moss is going to be joining me possibly every week. He can't make commands. He's got commitment issues, but, that's all right. We'll work through that. I've got him joining me. We're going to do a little bit of Ty talk until we can figure out a better name for this segment, and we're just going to bullshit and talk fantasy in this. No real advice. We both disagree on a lot of players and everything, and it's fun to argue with him the way that we do. So I'm just going to bring him on here. We're going to talk some fantasy football. So, Ty, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right, man. Just still talking shit about how bad your team is and how bad my team is. So let's go ahead and do this.
We all know that my team's not bad, man. I'm a very good fantasy player, and that's very evident by all of my wonderful success in fantasy, especially this year.
Yeah.
I think I started out.
Your one team out of 35 teams you have can,
hey, that's all that
that'll work.
matters. I'll latch on to that one team because it's fucking magnificent, and I'm glad with. I'm happy with it. All right, so what I like to do when I always bring people on here is get your guys' background and everything. So how long have you been playing fantasy football? And then tell me your favorite football team. You have a favorite NFL player?
Oh, probably. I've been doing fantasy since I'd say 08 now. So it would be what's that? That's 11 years.
Yeah, 11.
And then favorite teams, Dallas Cowboys, of course. Going to the Super Bowl this year with Kellen Moore. And then probably favorite player, anybody but Zeke, probably have to say. Even I think it's just more of a background on that was that you got him, and I was upset about the whole situation, but it's here nor there. And then I guess as of right now, it'd probably have to be Amari Cooper.
Amari
I think it's less the whole background of it all and the whole hidden joke that we have. But
yeah, so no, let's jump into this because I love this talk on why you don't like Zeke. So tell everybody here why you don't like Zeke Elliott, why you hate him so much. Because it's not because he's a phenomenal player; it's because you were stupid. So tell everybody how you were stupid.
I wouldn't. I was stupid. It was the timing of it with our the way that the trading went. You wanted Zeke coming out of Ohio State. I knew you wanted him. I had the first pick, but you gave me everybody as far as rookie picks. Well, you gave me two first round rookie picks, and then a first round rookie pick the following year. Yeah. Just basically the whole everybody that to set myself up for the following years. And I was like, let's do it. But it was the timing of it. The timing of it was before the NFL draft, and that was when the Cowboys had the fourth pick. And I said, man, they're not dumb. They're not going to go and get Zeke. It'll be all right. And of course, everything else, history's all written itself now. So
yeah, I mean, in all honesty, it worked out for you. You ended up turning that into Le'Veon Bell and some other players. So you got out of it. You did draft Derrick Henry, which was semi-stupid in my opinion. But hey, that part of it is what it is. We can skip past that part. But I mean, yeah, in all honesty, it was a fair trade. I know a lot of people in our league didn't like it, but I literally moved up one pick. I had the 1-2. I actually traded Jordy Nelson coming off his almost MVP type season there in Green Bay. So I had the 1-2 pick, and I traded you my pick, which was 1-9, I think, and then my first round pick the year later, all just to move up that one spot to get Zeke. So that was more of an overpay, in my opinion. But I got my guy.
That's part of it. It's the timing of it all, and that's where a lot of people. You can always play Monday morning quarterback and say, "Well, look at it now," but in the moment, at the time, it was a fair and all trade. Like any trades that we do, especially in the league. It's everything is in the moment, and that's what you have to look at. But a lot of people will say, "Well, looking at it now, it's like you can't look at it that way."
Yeah, I agree with you. It's a hindsight bias in a way. It's easy to go back and look at a trade now, but at the time, even then, I think you had won 1 or 2 games that year, so you were in a way rebuilding. Like you had with that right there, you got 3 picks dropping back 1 spot. And in all fairness, too, back then, everybody thought Derrick Henry might even be better than Zeke at that point in time. I was so big on Zeke, obviously being an Ohio State fan, I had a little bit of bias toward him as well. But not a lot of people back then were saying, oh, Derrick Henry's a huge drop-off from Zeke. They had those two right there together. So it's easy to look back at it now and be like, Derrick Henry kind of sucks, and Zeke's amazing. But back then, not a lot of people thought that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what's crazy. I'll go off a tangent real quick because of Derrick Henry and Alabama running backs. But it's like you have Ingram, Henry, now Jacobs.
Kenyon Drake.
Everybody was harping on like how Alabama running backs do not draft, do not grab them. But it's like it's crazy now because everybody's they're actually finding their own ways and actually doing well. The only person right now is Trent Richardson. That's like everybody's like, well, that's I feel like the only person ever. But until then, everybody was like, do not draft any Alabama running backs.
Well, if Cleveland probably wouldn't have reached and took Trent Richardson when they did, he probably would have had a good career because I felt like everybody who's gone to Cleveland in the past 2 decades have died. So I mean that's probably more on Cleveland than Trent Richardson if we're all being honest with ourselves.
Yeah, that's true. And I guess Bo Scarborough, we forgot about him, but I don't know. He wasn't as highly talented or highly rated as far as Ingram and Trent Richardson as well as now Jacobs. So.
Yeah, and Jacobs is going to be a bust here soon, too. He already kind of struggled last week against not so good Chiefs defense. I'm telling you, I know you're big on him. That motherfucker's going to hit a wall.
He'll be better than Sanders. I'll tell you that, Mike.
No, he won't. Sanders is going to ball out. Not this year. I'll give you that. Sanders is stuck in a stupid timeshare with 2 running backs who are not that good. But next year, Miles Sanders is going to be a smaller version of Saquon Barkley. You heard it here first, baby.
Okay. We'll put that on record. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, if it doesn't happen, I'll delete this episode. It's really easy to go in and do it. So, well, you said that your favorite team is the Cowboys, so I want to get your thoughts on the Cowboys. They obviously look like a better team so far this year. Kellen Moore, we've talked a little bit about it off air, has really kind of turned this team around. I mean, I hate to say this because it honestly pains me. I'm worried that the pain in my left arm right here, and admitting this might be the oncoming of a heart attack, and that the Cowboys might actually be Super Bowl contenders this year. How do you think, moving forward fantasy-wise, since this is a fantasy podcast, these guys are going to play out?
I think we've kind of jokingly said that about the whole betting with Amari Cooper that he'll be a top 10, but I think that he will to an extent. I think that he'll do really well. It sucks with Gallup being gone now and out for 3 to 4 weeks, possibly 6 if anything. But as far as Dak, man, if right now if you don't have Patrick Mahomes or Watson, man, I'm starting Dak Prescott as my quarterback. I mean, it's crazy to say because I didn't think he was that great of a passer, but I mean, everybody's saying it right now. Again, it's 2 weeks. You're playing Miami this coming up weekend, who's a college team, and so we'll see exactly. Again, we can always jump to conclusions and all that stuff, but as far as the Cowboys themselves, I do think Amari Cooper is going to be solidified as a top 10 receiver this coming up this year, and then Dak Prescott, man, I don't want to say he's going to be a top 5. But it will surprise me if he's a top 5, but I can see him easily being a top 10 fantasy-wise. Gallup, it just sucks. You can't take him and say, oh, in 6 games now or 7 games, because it's only a 13-week season in fantasy. So you can't say like, oh, he wasn't a good receiver because people are going to forget, oh, hey, he was missing 5 or 6 games. But Cobb, that's a flex in my opinion, if a deep flex, and then as well as Witten, deep tight end. If you don't have a tight end, that's just a sub tight end for anything as far as if you have a tight end that's on the bye. But my main starters are going to be Dak and Cooper right now.
I agree with you for the most part on Dak. I don't think he finishes as top 5, but I think he's easy top 10. I don't see any way he doesn't finish there unless that whole offense just completely shits the bed, and I can't imagine that's going to happen. I mean, you would have to have, I would think, multiple injuries. I also think a big thing with that offense not a lot of people are talking about is getting Travis Fredericks back. I do think that was a big issue with that team last year on the offense. But a lot of people know about this whole Amari Cooper thing because I shit on him, it feels like, on the daily on the podcast. So you are a big Amari Cooper proponent. So I want to do a little Amari Cooper talk here with you because you are just sold that he's going to be a top 10 wide receiver. Do you have any guess where he stands in the standings right now as a wide receiver through the first 2 weeks?
For 2 weeks, I'm going to go on a limb here. I'm saying he's probably 24, 25.
Okay, he's 19, so you were close.
Okay.
Which is probably closer to where he's going to finish this year, is right around 19.
That's a lie.
Let's look at it. We joked about this earlier, actually a couple days ago. Obviously, you've got a bunch of guys up there at the top that are not going to be up there. None of us expect John Ross, who is currently the number one in wide receiver in fantasy, going to stay up there, right? You don't. I imagine you agree he's going to fall
Tell
off.
me who, I wouldn't have told if you'd said, "Hey, who was the number one receiver as of right now?" John Ross would have been no idea.
Yeah, I agree with you. So you've got a bunch of people. I'm just going to run through a list of them. Tell me if you think any of these guys have a chance. These are guys that I would imagine don't. You got John Ross, Sammy Watkins, Marquise Hollywood Brown, Emmanuel Sanders, DJ Chark,
No.
Chris Godwin.
No.
Okay, I think he's close, but I do agree with you. Calvin Ridley, I don't think finishes up there. Larry Fitzgerald doesn't. What about Kenny Galladay?
I think that people I'd say no. 15, 16.
Okay. Obviously, DeMarcus Robinson's a no. Tyrell Williams is probably a no. John Brown, a no. So, that's a pretty good chunk of the list right there. I will admit that. But here's my thing. I'm going to go back to last year's standings, where, again, Amari Cooper did play a bunch of games in Oakland, missed a game due to the head injury, sucked in Oakland. Maybe that was Derek Carr in the offense. Who knows? Does come over to Dallas, as we've talked about, balled out. Not easy for a wide receiver to do to come over in the middle of the season and ball out. Tyreek Hill finishes the number one wide receiver last year. Chances are he is not going to outscore Amari Cooper now being out for 6 weeks. We know he's not coming back till at least week 7, probably closer to week 8, week 9. Even with Patrick Mahomes, I think we can both agree he's not going to finish ahead of Amari Cooper, assuming Amari Cooper finishes as a top 10 wide receiver.
Correct.
Okay. What about DeAndre Hopkins? I think it's fair to say he's finishing above. Okay. Devontae Adams.
Yes.
Okay. Julio Jones.
Yes.
That should have been a lot quicker on the yes there, but okay. We'll continue. We'll continue moving on. Michael Thomas.
Yes. So yeah. Just because he's going to get Teddy Bridgewater's going to feed him the ball. He's going to feed him the ball.
Keenan Allen.
See, I feel like they're about the same, and that's in all reality. I'll give the edge to Keenan Allen just because he has a quarterback that's been known to be giving him the ball more in that sense. If that makes any sense.
Yes, it does. So Keenan Allen, I actually don't. He's a good. He's only 4 points ahead of him right now. So yeah, you're right on spot with that. I just lost to Mark Cooper. He's at 32 and Keenan Allen's at 36 points. So 4 points ahead of him. So they're still fairly close right now going into this season. But I would take Keenan Allen over him. This will be the interesting one. Antonio Brown.
No.
See,
the only reason is that I think that the Patriots they just do everything just the opposite of what everybody thinks. I think that especially, I mean, again, not a lot of people are going to look at Miami as far as just being a football team in general, but like they're just going to say the Patriots do this because they're the effing Patriots. They're like, hey, we're going to showcase Antonio a little bit, and then people will kind of be like, hey, well, we got to look out for him. Let's look out for him. And next thing you know, Philip Dorsett's still going to go off, and he's going to be I think Philip Dorsett is going to be a better overall receiver at the end of the year than Antonio Brown as far as stat-wise, fantasy-wise.
I should have just hung up on you right then after that call, but we're going to keep going because I've only gotten 13 minutes of segment here. So we're going to keep going, but that is a horrible call on your part, Philip Dorsett being better than Antonio Brown. All right, Odell Beckham Jr. It's not even a question. I know you're going to say no because you hate the Browns and you think Amari Cooper's better.
I'll give OBJ. All
right, let's see here.
How many guys you got so far?
Let's see. I don't know. I was just trying to count that up. I'm looking at this year's list, not last year's list at the moment. So right now we've got DeAndre Hopkins, Adams, Julio Jones, Michael Thomas, Keenan Allen, and then Odell. So that's 6 right now. There's still quite a few guys that we got to get to. However, and this is, again, we talked about this a little bit, is where I think you're going to end up winning this bet, because a lot of these next couple guys I'm going to name really got fucked here in the past couple weeks. Number 1 being Juju. I think going into last week would have been an easy yes. Now, even I am a little shaky on Juju possibly finishing as a top 10 wide receiver.
Yeah, but you could say, I guess you can argue the fact of if Juju won't, how come Michael Thomas will? If let's just say if Drew Brees is out 8 weeks, that's the majority of 13 weeks of fantasy. So in the sense of like if Michael Thomas is going to be a top 10 receiver with Teddy Bridgewater, why can't Juju Smith-Schuster be a top 10? Now, I'm not advocating that Juju will, but what makes you weird about that then?
So the one thing I'll say is, as crazy as this is to say, I trust Teddy Bridgewater a little bit more. I've at least seen him in the NFL and do a little bit. On top of that, they have no one else. And I mean no one else. Ted Ginn is phenomenal for what he does in stretching the field. I don't see him making any kind of impact. We haven't seen anything out of Jared Cook. The only one that might steal some looks away from him is going to be Alvin Kamara if he gets some dump-offs from Teddy Bridgewater. For the Steelers offense, I feel like they have a lot more weapons around him. They have James Conner. They have Jalen Samuels. James Washington and Mason Rudolph, we've seen, have had a great connection through college, preseason. They've got Vance McDonald there who's proven he can be a legit tight end when they throw him the ball. I would take all those guys over half of the Saints players, which is crazy to say, where I think Teddy Bridgewater is going to focus in on Michael Thomas. And the one thing I'll say, I don't think this is outrageous to say, Michael Thomas is a better wide receiver than Juju. He just is. He's got a bigger catch radius. He's a better possession receiver.
Yeah, but I mean, I get that. I mean, because Juju has been the second receiver, so he's had the second cornerback per se that against the defense, stuff like that. So I mean, I get that part of it, that he's transitioning into the number 1. Now, not saying like he's going to be. When a lot of people were like, "Man, he's the number 1. He's the only thing in Pittsburgh, receiver wise, going into the season." And then he hasn't fulfilled it. But again, transitioning into that number 1, sometimes people do well, sometimes people don't do well. So I get that, though.
All right, so you going to put him ahead of him, though? That's the question. Are you going to put him ahead of Amari Cooper this year?
Ooh. Let me go no. I'll go no.
No? I'll go yes, just for the hell of it. So that gives us 7 right now. The next 3, and these 3 I think are all going to be tight. We'll start with the one that I think has a better shot, even though I hate this guy, and that's Mike Evans in Tampa Bay.
I would, as of starting of week 2, or starting into week 3, I'd say no. I will say no.
I will somewhat give you that one. I'm hesitant on him as well. The next 2 both finished in the top 12 last year. One of them finishing at 7, the other finishing at 11. However, their offenses looked extremely shitty so far, especially throwing the ball, with the way that their running back has been going off, and that's Adam Thielen and Stephon Diggs. Do either, neither, or both finish ahead of Amari Cooper this year?
I'm not a big Thielen fan. I feel like Thielen's like, but I'll give Thielen it. Sorry, I'm just gonna. Okay. I'll just say that. But Diggs wise, I just say the only reason being is that this is week 2 going into week 3, but Dalvin Cook is getting a lot of reps, and I think they're going to continue feeding that dude. And they're going to keep on relying on him a lot more. And I just think Adam Thielen will finish it. Stephon Diggs will take him out.
Yeah, I agree with you until Dalvin Cook blows out his ACL again in week 8 because they're giving him the ball too much.
Don't put that juju on him now.
And that's perfect because we play each other in week 9, so that's exactly what's going to happen. So let's go to the next couple players we got here. One of them finished in the top 12 last year in Robert Woods. The other finished just outside, and that's Brandon Cooks. We're at 8 right now. Do either one of these 2 finish in the top 10?
No. The only reason why I say it, just because there's a lot of mouths to feed there. Could they finish 12, 13, and 14? Absolutely. As far as Cup, if Cup stays healthy. But I just think that I say the only reason why I say it is that I think Sean McVay is trying to do a little bit of Bill Belichick, saying like, who are we actually going to contain? Who are we going to keep? And who are we going to contain? And they don't know exactly who to contain. But the thing is that Goff is going to spread the ball around. We all know it. But he does. We all know that he does love Kupp more just because of him being roommates and stuff like that during the offseason. But as far as just him spreading the ball around, that's why I'm just saying that there's going to be those three receivers could easily be, again, 13, 14, 15, 15, 16, 17 in the sense that they just finished right there in the teens, but outside of Amari Cooper in the top 10.
Okay, I'm going to give one at least, and I think it's going to be Brandon Cooks. I love Robert Woods. I own him in a couple leagues, but I think Brandon Cooks is going to have a huge breakout year this year. We saw it a little bit in week 2. I am a little worried about it, like you were talking about, just because it does seem like it's going to be one or the other every single week, and if it continues to change, Robert Woods had a good week in week 1, Brandon Cooks went off in week 2, so if it does continue to do that, neither one of them will, but that offense is too high-powered. They play a lot of bad teams going later into the year. I think I don't think both, but I think one of them is going to jump Amari Cooper. So that gives us 9 right there. I only got to find one more player out of all these wide receivers, and we're going to fucking do it, so... Let's go, T.Y. Hilton. T.Y., baby.
No.
T.Y.
No, not even close. Not even close.
T.Y. He's going to do it. He's my 10 right there. Jacoby Brissett has been looking for him. Go ahead. Go give me your crap analysis on T.Y. Hilton.
He has cool initials. Jacoby Brissett, man, it's just he's never really like he's like T.Y., but he's never like as far as just being fantasy relevant. Just T.Y. he'll finish in the I'd say the high teens this year, just because again it's week 3 or going into week 3. We're trying to see the future, but we don't know the future. But as far as my prediction of the future, T.Y. will finish in as far as the high teens. 17, 18, 19.
All right. I still think he'll finish it right up there at 10, but we'll try somebody else here.
What did he do last year? I mean, it's of course with Andrew Luck.
What did he do last year? He finished at 14. He finished at 14 last year. But he also missed a bunch of games last year. He was injured. Let me see here. He got 201 points and missed 3 games last year. He pretty much averaged double digits. He had 2 single-digit games last year, one 7.5 and one 3.9. I'm sorry, 3 and a 9.2 game. So outside of those 3 games, he was double digits every single game.
And that's with a healthy, now retired Andrew Luck. But
correct.
Okay, I got you.
But the one thing is, you also have to remember, this team is a lot better than when Jacoby Brissett was the quarterback last time. They've looked fairly decent through 2 weeks, playing 2 good opponents as well. So you can't take that away from him. And he's targeted T.Y. Hilton heavily in both those games because much like the whole, who are we just talking about? The Michael Thomas argument, there is no one else to throw the ball to in Indy. He's got Eric Ebron who struggles with drops like Amari Cooper does. So he's going to go to T.Y. Hilton.
Yeah, okay. But I mean, again, maybe I jumped the gun onto it. I mean, a lot of your facts you always come up with facts, but it's, again, the facts don't lie, or the stats don't lie, and I mean, but I also stick to the late teens on Ty.
All right.
Maybe ahead of all the trio in LA, but
we'll touch on 3 more. And
so
go ahead.
Keep going with it.
Okay,
what do you got?
We're going to go 3 more, and I know you're not going to think any of them because you want Amari Cooper to finish in the top 10, but there are 3 guys I think could be close. Tyler Boyd in Cincinnati.
No, because AJ Green's coming back.
Is he?
From what I've heard for the past several weeks, yeah. But if he comes back, let's just say he does come back.
Yeah.
No, he won't.
Okay.
Boyd will not.
Tyler Lockett.
No.
Why?
They run the ball too much.
Do they?
They run the ball way too much. Who ran the ball the most last year?
Seattle did.
Please
We're not talking about 2018. We're talking about 2019 now.
Okay, again, who's probably running the ball. I don't have the stats up right now, but who's probably running the ball the most this year in 2 games? Probably Seattle.
Minnesota, actually. That would be my guess.
Minnesota. Okay.
Yeah, Seattle might be second, but Minnesota's one.
But at the end of the year,
Dalvin Cook ran the ball 30 times.
You're going to go with Seattle.
No. Okay, maybe. I'll somewhat give you that one. He was a little bit of a stretch. And the last one, because I really think he has a chance to be up there, Chris Godwin. You said no earlier. Why? Tell me why. Because everybody loves him, and he's getting the ball a ton. We've seen that the slot wide receiver, it was Larry the Legend, which I'll give you that, in Arizona with Bruce Arians, was a top 10 wide receiver when he was there. Chris Godwin does not have maybe Larry Fitzgerald's talent, but he is an extremely talented wide receiver, so why will he not finish up there near the top 10?
As weird as this is to say that I think that there's too many mouths to feed there. And the only reason why I'm saying that is that you have Mike Evans and O.J. Howard along with Chris Godwin. And I think that I saw it on today that they asked Bruce Arians, hey, when is O.J. Howard going to receive the ball? And he said the balls are going to come to him. And I'm going to take that with a grain of salt, but that when the media is asking about, oh, when is this guy going to, because again, how many people were big on O.J. Howard this year? I mean, from going into the season, a lot of people were comparing him to being the Evan Ingram tier. I forget who else the other tight ends were at this time, but like he was in that echelon or that little group of tight ends to be there, and he hasn't in 2 weeks. I think that there's going to be too many mouths to feed in that sense that Chris Godwin will get his own, but he'll finish, I think, in 20 to 30 as far as receiver. Mike Evans will finish higher than him. Again, it's 2 weeks in. I'm going to just keep on resorting back to that. I don't know how many times I've said it, but I think that's every time it's going to come back to it, that Evans is going to be the number one. I'll give Godwin the number 2, and then they still got to feed the ball to O.J. Howard, and that's also with a quarterback that's just inconsistent. I mean, let's be honest.
Oh, I'll give you that. He is extremely inconsistent. And you said it's only week 2 enough times that if we made a drinking game out of it, everybody would be drunk right now, just so you know.
Pretty much, yeah. So, I'm keep going. So Chris Godwin out. Chris Godwin out. So you give me 3 outside of the top 10. I've denied all 3.
Yes.
Is there anybody else?
No. According to your standings now, he'll finish 10 because we've got 9 ahead of him. I have 10.
That's what the bet is. I said top 10, and as of right now, you will be losing the bet.
As of right now. So let me ask you something. One thing, before we move off Amari Cooper, we'll touch on a couple more things before we get out of here. But I want to ask you one thing on Amari Cooper. The one thing I feel like we can all admit, and I've said, joking aside, he is an elite wide receiver in the NFL. I don't think he's elite fantasy-wise, but I do think he is an elite NFL wide receiver. Where he struggles, and in all fairness, a lot of wide receivers in the NFL struggle, is with extremely good physical cover corners, correct? Would you agree with that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
Outside of Hopkins.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying a lot of wide receivers are good with it. There are a lot of wide receivers who are not good against strong physical corners. We even saw Hopkins struggle against Jalen Ramsey, who is, again, top 3 probably in the league right now, and he got 6 catches for 40 yards. So I'm not trying to say that I'm not poo-pooing Amari Cooper at all by saying that statement, just throwing that out there. There are a lot of good cornerbacks. Wide receivers tend to struggle against really good cornerbacks. So let me ask you, Saints, Marshawn Lattimore. Can Amari Cooper put up a lot of points against Marshawn Lattimore? Because he didn't last year.
Is Marshawn covering him the whole time? I don't know how far.
Lattimore, for the most part, Lattimore, what's it called? I can't think of the word right now. He travels. He doesn't always travel, but for the most part, he travels.
Amari Cooper. Yeah, if he travels with him, Amari Cooper will struggle.
Okay.
Because I'll just say with Washington, he didn't because of Josh Norman, but Josh Norman a lot different cornerback. But anyway, that's here nor there.
But I mean, don't tell him I said that because he beat my ass. But Josh Norman sucks. All right, let's move on. The Packers. The one thing I'll say about the Packers, while they don't have a shutdown cornerback, their defense right now is the best against the pass. Now, they have not played two great opponents. They've pretty much held Minnesota in check. Maybe that's because Kirk Cousins sucks. I don't know. Again, as you like to keep saying, it is only week 2, so let's not overreact. But the Packers secondary has looked phenomenal so far against the Bears and the Vikings. And the Cowboys have them in 2 weeks. So what do you expect from a game from Amari Cooper in that one?
That's going to be my game for just the Cowboys in general. I think that Cooper's going to get his own because with it not being a shutdown cornerback, a physical cornerback, but there's, again, like you said, though, that no one is you don't know the cornerback who's going to guard him. So I feel like that Dak's going to give him the ball. He'll be a wide receiver. I give him a wide receiver 2. I'm not going to give him a 1. I'll give him a wide receiver 2. But feel like he'll be fine. He'll be fine. The Dallas Cowboys will be fine. But that's going to be the biggest test as Cowboys in whole. But I think Amari will be fine.
All right. Next up, they've got the Jets, which I feel like Amari could probably have a good game there. I mean, you got Jamal Adams, but I don't think he really travels or anything like that. So probably a good chance for Amari to have a good game in that one. I will give him that. Eagles, same thing. I don't see him struggling that much against the Eagles. While they have a good overall defense so far, their secondary has struggled this year, so I would think Amari has a good game. Then they've got the bye week. I am worried about the Giants either, but here's another test for them. They've got 4. I take that back. 4 big tests in a row. And this is where I think it's going to come down to me winning this bet. Vikings.
Okay.
Vikings have a really good secondary. And I do think that they can be physical with Amari Cooper and limit his production. Will he put up points? Yeah, I don't expect him to give you a 0, but he's not going to get you I personally don't think if he goes double digits, it's going to be right around 10 or 11 that week. I don't think he has one of those 20 to 18-point weeks that week.
No, yeah, I'll agree with you on that. 10 to 11 is fine, but we'll just jump back real quick to the other team that he's playing that you said he's not going to struggle with. So if he puts up 15 to 20 points, then that 11-point game is kind of overshadowed in the sense that being a top 10.
Yeah, so he's had 3 good games out of we've touched on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We're on 6 now. So he's had 3 good, 3 bad, more than likely. So again, back to what Amari did last year, which everyone seems to overlook, because all you guys want to do, all you Amari lovers, when you're stroking your cocks and thinking about him, is that you think about his 20 and 18-point games. You guys forget about the games where he put up 3, 4, 7, 8 for the 3 and 4 weeks in between those big games. But we'll get back to that in a minute, because I want to go to the next game. The Detroit Lions and Darius Slay, who travels. Amari Cooper ain't doing anything against Darius Slay. Darius Slay is one of the best cornerbacks in the league.
Yeah, but I get you on it, but I think that that it'll be quick note. It'll be different. It'll be different to see exactly, because I think that Kellen Moore understands that Amari Cooper does struggle against those types of receivers. So it'll be interesting to see what he does with them. He may do the Kyle Shanahan and say, you know what, let's go ahead and put him in the slot. Let's back him off the line. So he's not as getting physical on the outside, lining up at the line of scrimmage. So he's getting jammed. So it'll be interesting to see. Who knows, man? But only time will tell on that.
I think even if he goes in the slot, Darius Slay is going to follow him. He tends to follow the best wide receivers, but I could be wrong. Next up, the New England Patriots and Stephon Gilmore. You're going to tell me he's going to have a good game against Gilmore?
Yeah, I think he will.
I disagree with you 100% on that.
I think, but again, what's a good game is 10 or 11 points.
15 points.
Not great, but I think that
10 points.
Could he?
10 points is not going to get him in the top 10. He's going to have to get you 15 to 20 points at this point. So no, I don't think he gets that. The Buffalo Bills, who are also right now one of the best defenses in the league. Again, as to get ready to take your shot, we're only 2 weeks in. But they are still one of the best defenses in the league right now. Now, this one, I could see him having a good game. But I'm going to say the same thing. I think he gets you 10 to 11 points again.
Yeah. I mean, I can see it, but it's consistency too. And that if he consistently gets 10 points, if 8 points or 9 points, if he gets that for 3 weeks, out of the whole 13 weeks that the season of fantasy it is, then like I'm okay with that. Now, is it a top 10 receiver in those 3 weeks? No, but again, going back to the games that he could get those 20, like I think that again that it's going to overshadow it and it'll put him in that top 10 in my opinion.
I doubt it. I really think he's got to get more than 10 points a game. I'll look at something in a minute, but then you got Bears, which I think will be a tough matchup. Rams, it could go either way. That could become a shootout, so he could probably put up points against the Rams. And then he's got Eagles, Redskins. We already saw what he did against, well, didn't actually have a great game against the Redskins, but they're a team I think he could have a good game against if he even plays. Because at that point, they may already have the division locked up. They may sit him. They sat Zeke last year. So we'll see what happens with that. I want to pull something up really quick, and then I'm going to move on. Ask you one more question before we get out of here. So you said that you thought 12 points a week consistency might get him a fair. See, I don't want to do this because that's not fair, actually. I was going to say that would have landed him as wide receiver 30 this past week because that's what he got you, 12.4 points. The four catches, 44 yards, and a touchdown, 12.4 points. Finishes as wide receiver 30 on the week this past week. And, I mean, just looking at this list, obviously there are a couple people you could take off there. Calvin Ridley, John Ross, Nelson Aguilar. Guys of those type, Demarcus Robinson, Marquise Goodwin, Cooper Kupp, DJ Chark, Devin Smith. So, yeah, there's a chance, obviously, that he could finish up there. But I really think I've got this one in the bag, buddy. I appreciate you talking through it.
But real quick on that note, if you look back last year, what did Thielen average? What did Diggs average? Those guys are in the top, like, 8, 9, and 10.
So the top 8, 9, and 10, Juju Smith-Schuster, who finished 8, averaged 15-15. Adam Thielen, 15-74. Mike Evans at 9, 15-09. Robert Woods at 10, 13-9-1. Stephon Diggs, who finished at 11, averaged 14.35 points. Keenan Allen at 12, 13-2-3. T.Y. Hilton at 13, averaged 14.36. Odell Beckham at 15, averaged 16.6. And then you start getting down into the 12 and 13s, and you're down now at wide receivers 16 and 17.
Okay.
And then obviously some of those guys, like you got T.Y., Odell, Keenan Allen, all those guys missing games as well and still average those points.
Okay. I got you. But like I said, I'm not going to say that he's going to consistently – I don't want him to average the 10, but again, he'll finish top 10. He'll finish top 10.
Yeah, I know that's what you're saying.
And I'll win the bet. I'll win the bet, and I think – what's the bet? Is it shaved head or is it
that's the T-shirt thing.
Shirt.
It doesn't even make sense what we decided on the T-shirt thing, but it's a T-shirt bet, so we'll stick with that. All right. So what I want to get from you really quick before we get out of here, and then we'll save some debating on this for the next episode. Hopefully that you can join me, and we'll do some more talks about like the Thursday night games and everything moving forward. We just wanted to kind of have a little bit of fun in this first episode and see how well it went. I want to get your top 12 backs real quick. Who are your top 12 running backs that you think, or who you think is going to be the top 12 this season?
Oh, man. I mean, well, let's be honest. You have Zeke. You have, I'll say Zeke, Saquon, Kamara, your normal McCaffrey. 5, I'll go with Bell. 6, you have, oh man, you would do this to me like right off the head right now.
Test your fantasy knowledge.
All right, now you have 6 is David Johnson. 7, I'd say, I hate saying it, Todd Gurley, but Todd will finish top 10, which again week 2. But 8. I feel like I'm missing a couple of guys. Let's see here. 8 will be.
I mean, you're missing your guy right now, so you're obviously not that. You don't have that much. Yeah,
Dalvin Cook will be 8. 9. Man, I would say Nick Chubb, man, and then 10. Ooh, 10's just a toss up, but let's go with. Man, I don't even. I'm trying to think. I'm trying to go with just running through everybody.
Well, I'll give you a list of people you haven't named yet that have a fairly good point so far this season. You got Derrick Henry, Austin Eckler, Josh Jacobs, Marlon Mack, Mark Ingram, Chris Carson, Aaron Jones, Devin Singletary, Kerryon Johnson, Damian Williams, Leonard Fournette, James Conner, Royce Freeman, Rex Burkhead, David Montgomery. Any of those guys pique your interest?
I'll stop you. Let's you know what? I'll go with my 10th is Aaron Jones. I think Aaron Jones, Matt LaFleur will give him the rock a lot more, and he'll finish the top 10.
You got 2 more. I said
and
top 12.
Barring any injuries, right?
What's up?
With the Dalvin Cook, this is barring any injuries, correct?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I won't hold any of this against you in case they suck. Let's see here. So, Derrick Henry. Well, Austin Eckler obviously is not once Melvin Gordon comes back. You don't think so? Right now, like Mark Ingram, Derrick Henry, your boy Josh Jacobs, the phenom rookie in Oakland, all those guys right there. Where do you think those 3 finish? Real quick before we get out of here.
Josh Jacobs, 13 to 15. Derrick Henry, 14 to 16. And you said Ingram. Man, Ingram's just a turd that won't flush. I'll give him the 12 to 15.
12 to 15.
On that area.
Okay. All right.
Mid
to, what'd you say? Mid 15s, right around there?
Yeah, all 3 of those guys.
All right. One more question before we get out of here. Who's your most owned fantasy player that you think of, and how many leagues are you in?
Oh, I'm in 8 this year. Most I've done.
Big ball.
Le'Veon Bell is my number 1 player, right. And we'll see what happens with him. He's carrying a lot of load.
Patriots are going to twist his leg on the way on a tackle. He's going to tear his ACL. You're going to come crying in here next week.
Right now, you have Dalvin Cook and Le'Veon Bell getting their ACL tore by week 4. So
if that happens, I will go. Buddy. I know you'll quit. I said you shouldn't draft injury-prone players. No, I was going to say you'll quit, like your other leagues, right? When things don't go well for you, you just drop out. I can't do it anymore. I'm done.
Exactly, but as far as our league itself, having Josh Jacobs, David Montgomery, I'm not too worried in the sense of depth if that does happen.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to record a podcast this weekend with a couple of the guys in our league, and we'll post that up this weekend, and we'll talk all about our teams and our leagues because it's loaded. Other people, when you guys listen to my team, will roster bait for me. I don't even have to do it, so it'll be a lot of fun to talk about that. Hopefully this weekend, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you for joining me today, buddy. We've done a nice little 42 minutes here. We'll get it up there, and hopefully we can continue to do this every week.
No, we appreciate it, man.
Prepare for glory!
I don't know if you got your popcorn ready. Do you got your popcorn ready? I came out the womb, I was ready. And he's hit the end zone for an unbelievable touchdown.
I would be honored if you played football for this team.
Throw it up above his head. They can't jump with me. Golly. Oh, they tackle him at the 40-yard line. Who can make a play? I can. Who can make a play? I can.